Anna felt the weight of the room. The air was thick, filled with the sound of hushed whispers and the uncomfortable shuffle of shoes on polished floors. Her fingers clutched the folder tightly, knuckles white. Her heart raced. Each breath she took seemed louder than the last. Around her, a crowd of onlookers gathered, their eyes sharp, eager to witness the unfolding drama. She had been here for what felt like hours, yet her case was still being denied, over and over. She was in the lobby of Marlin State Bank. An old, prestigious institution that had always been known for its personal touch, its air of dignity and professionalism. That was before Anna's claim. A claim she knew to be true, but one that no one here seemed to believe. "Madam, I'm afraid you're mistaken," the branch manager said, his voice too calm, too dismissive. He wasn't even looking at her now, his attention turned to the papers spread out before him on the desk. "Our records show no association between you and this account." Anna could hear the slight laugh in his voice, the way it caught on the last syllable. He was mocking her, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She hadn't come here to be humiliated. She had come to claim what was rightfully hers, the inheritance her late husband had left her. The inheritance she'd been promised after his sudden death. She opened the folder, pulling out document after document, presenting them with quiet dignity. Birth certificates. A marriage certificate. Signed letters from law firms. She had it all. But each time she handed over another piece of evidence, the laughter grew. A woman, dressed in a navy blue suit, flicked her hair back with an exaggerated motion, shooting Anna a look of superiority. "Sweetheart, you really think we're going to just hand over a fortune to someone who can't even prove she's part of the family?" she sneered. Anna felt the sting of her words. The woman's voice was dripping with condescension, her tone cutting through the air like a knife. Still, Anna remained calm. She would not let these people see her break. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly and said, "I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking for my inheritance, which is my right, according to the will." The branch manager raised an eyebrow, looking up at her as though she were some kind of inconvenience. "According to the will, Mrs. Davenport," he said, stressing her married name in a way that made it sound like an insult, "you were to inherit nothing. Your late husband's fortune was to go to other family members, not you." At this, the crowd behind Anna stirred, murmurs passing from one person to another. "That's what I thought," the woman in the blue suit whispered to her colleague. Anna's stomach churned. She had already been through this before, countless times over the last few weeks, trying to prove that her late husband, Alaric Davenport, had indeed left her everything. But no one believed her. As Anna took another step forward, a man in a gray suit, standing nearby, tapped his phone against his palm. His eyes flicked over her with a mix of pity and curiosity. "This is going to be good," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. The whole room seemed to shift in its focus, and Anna realized, with growing dread, that she wasn't being seen as a woman seeking justice. She was being seen as a spectacle, something to gawk at. She knew what they all thought. She was just another gold digger, trying to claim something that wasn't hers. Her fingers trembled as she pushed another stack of papers towards the manager. This one was different. The official court letter from the lawyers. The one that confirmed everything. "This is the will," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "This is the proof." The manager glanced at the letter and waved it away without even reading it. "A forgery," he said dismissively. "Nice try." Anna's breath caught in her throat. A forgery? The letter was legitimate. Everything was real. She had gone through every possible channel to verify the documents. But still, they wouldn't believe her. The laughter grew louder. A woman in the back of the room let out a loud, mocking giggle. "Honestly, you think you can waltz in here and fool everyone with this story? You must be delusional." Anna's face burned. She wanted to shout, to scream at them all, but she knew that wouldn't help her. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, pushing the frustration down deep. She couldn't let them see how much they had hurt her. She couldn't let them win. Without a word, she straightened her back, lifted the final document, and placed it on the counter. The manager didn't even look up. Instead, he turned to his assistant, a young woman who had been sitting quietly by the phone. He muttered something under his breath, and the assistant nodded before picking up the receiver. Anna felt her chest tighten. This wasn't going well. It was all slipping away, and there was nothing she could do about it. But then, something shifted in the air. The bank doors opened with a loud thud. The sound echoed across the marble floors, cutting through the silence. Everyone froze. A tall, imposing figure stepped through the doors, flanked by two bodyguards who moved like shadows. The man was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, his presence commanding the attention of every person in the room. His hair was dark, slicked back with precision, and his eyes were hidden behind sleek sunglasses. But the room didn't need to see his eyes to know who he was. It was Alaric Davenport, her husband. The billionaire. A gasp swept through the crowd. The whispers grew louder. Some of them looked in shock, others in awe. Alaric was a name that carried weight. He was more than just wealthy. He was a business tycoon, a name known across the globe, and his sudden appearance here, in a small, seemingly insignificant bank, was enough to send the entire room into a state of stunned silence. Anna's breath hitched in her throat. Her eyes locked with his. For a brief moment, she felt the familiar warmth of his gaze, the calmness that always seemed to wash over her whenever he was near. But today, something felt different. His expression was hard, almost cold. He wasn't just here to save her. He was here to make them all realize they had made a grave mistake. Alaric, Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. He turned to her, giving her a brief nod before his eyes moved to the manager, then to the rest of the bank staff. Alaric didn't waste time. He stepped forward, his tall frame pushing through the stunned crowd. His bodyguards flanked him, standing like stone walls on either side. The manager opened his mouth to speak, but Alaric raised a hand, silencing him. "Enough," he said, his voice low, powerful. His tone was like ice. "You will release every cent of my wife's inheritance. Now." The bank manager's face went pale, and the assistant next to him fumbled for the papers. The crowd could barely breathe. But Anna wasn't sure if she should feel relief or dread. There was something in Alaric's eyes that made her uneasy. She didn't know what was coming next, but she could feel the tension tightening around her chest. "Call the lawyer," Alaric said. "Do it now." The manager quickly picked up the phone, his hands shaking. And that's when Anna noticed the woman in the blue suit again. She had been watching the entire exchange from the corner of the room, but now her attention was elsewhere. She was typing furiously on her phone, her eyes darting between Alaric and the rest of the room. Anna's heart skipped a beat. Something wasn't right. Before she could speak, a loud siren sounded from outside. The sound pierced the air, followed by the flashing of red and blue lights that reflected off the glass windows. "Police." Anna's stomach churned. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. Alaric leaned in close to her, his words barely a whisper. "Stay calm. No matter what happens next, don't panic." But inside, Anna knew, nothing would ever be the same again. The billionaire's secrets unveil, and the dark truth behind Anna's claim. The sirens wailed outside, their sound piercing through the tense silence in the bank. Anna's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in shallow bursts. She could barely keep her hands from shaking, her grip tightening around the folder she still clutched. Alaric Davenport, the man who had stood by her side through everything. Her late husband. The wealth, the success, was now standing in front of her with that cold, almost menacing expression on his face. Something wasn't right. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hall, followed by the heavy, deliberate tread of the police officers. The bank manager, his face ghostly pale, spoke into the phone, his voice frantic, barely able to get the words out. The officers rushed in, their faces grim and focused. "Where's the lawyer?" one of them barked. His eyes scanned the room, darting from Alaric to Anna, back to the staff. Alaric didn't flinch. He simply stood there, his back straight, his hands clasped behind him, exuding an authority that was as unnerving as it was undeniable. The crowd shifted, murmuring in confusion. No one had expected this. The wealthy billionaire's sudden appearance had already sent shockwaves through the room, but now, with the police showing up, the tension had reached a boiling point. "Step aside, please," one of the officers said, nodding to the manager. "We need to speak with Mrs. Davenport." The manager looked from Anna to Alaric, unsure whether he should move. But the officer's tone brooked no argument. The manager stepped back, and the police began to speak with Anna. "Ma'am," the officer said softly, his voice carrying a note of sympathy, "can you tell us what happened here?" Anna's mind raced. She didn't know where to begin. She wasn't sure if she even understood what was happening. Just hours ago, she had walked into this bank with hope, with the belief that she could finally claim what was rightfully hers, her late husband's inheritance. But now, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, and the presence of the officers only made things worse. I came here to claim my inheritance," Anna began, her voice trembling. "The will stated that everything belonged to me, to my name. But they said it wasn't true. They said the will was a forgery." Her words spilled out in a rush, desperation lacing each syllable. The officer nodded slowly, processing the information. His gaze flicked to Alaric, who had yet to say a word, his gaze unwavering. Alaric's cold eyes met Anna's for a brief moment, and she could see the subtle shift in his expression. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. The intensity, the tension, something about this wasn't just about money. It was about something far deeper. "Do you have the will?" the officer asked. Anna nodded, still clutching the folder to her chest. She handed the officer the documents, and he examined them carefully, his brow furrowing. "Everything seems in order," he muttered under his breath. But the officer's eyes never left Alaric. Anna couldn't understand. Why had Alaric insisted she stay calm? Why had he brought the police into this? Was he trying to protect her, or was there something more going on? The crowd in the bank had quieted down. They were watching with bated breath, waiting for the next twist in this strange, unfolding drama. Some of them were still whispering to each other, trying to make sense of the situation. And then, as if it wasn't strange enough, the woman in the navy blue suit stepped forward again. Anna barely noticed her at first, too focused on the officer's movements, but the woman's presence seemed to weigh heavy in the room. She was holding her phone to her ear, and the smug expression on her face made Anna's stomach churn. The woman glanced up, meeting Anna's eyes with a look that sent a chill down her spine. Anna tried to ignore her, but the woman kept talking, her voice low but full of venom. "Yes, I'm sure," she was saying into the phone. "It's her. Anna Davenport. The one trying to claim the fortune. Yes, I've seen the will, but you need to understand, there's more to this than she's telling anyone." Anna's heart skipped a beat. What was she talking about? What did she know? Alaric's gaze flicked over to the woman, narrowing slightly. Anna saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "Who is she?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. Alaric didn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifted his weight, glancing at the officer, then back to the woman. "Her name is Veronica Clark," Alaric said, his voice low, controlled. "She's a lawyer. A very ambitious one, I might add." The officer raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "And why is she involved in this?" Because she's been working against us from the start, Alaric said, his voice a low growl. She's the one who filed a claim to challenge Anna's inheritance in the first place. She's trying to destroy everything we've worked for. Anna's stomach turned. Veronica Clark had been working against them? But why? What could this woman possibly want with her life, with Alaric's fortune? What was her game? Suddenly, it all began to click. Veronica had been present in the meetings when Anna and Alaric had discussed their plans. She had always been there, always trying to insert herself into their business dealings. But Anna had never realized how much influence the woman truly had. Why didn't you tell me about her? Anna demanded, her voice rising. She could feel the anger bubbling inside her. Why didn't you warn me? Alaric turned to face her fully. His eyes were steely, emotionless. I didn't want to put you in danger. You were already dealing with enough. Danger? Anna's voice cracked. From who? The question hung in the air, unanswered, but Anna felt the shift in Alaric's demeanor. Something was wrong. There was something he wasn't telling her. The officer seemed to sense the tension building between them. Ma'am, please remain calm. We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll figure it out. But Anna wasn't sure anymore. She wasn't sure what to believe, who to trust. The weight of the situation was suffocating her. The crowd was still watching, but now their whispers had turned to murmurs of doubt. Was she really entitled to the fortune, or had she been lying all along? And then, the unthinkable happened. The officer's phone buzzed, interrupting the heavy silence. He glanced at the screen, his face tightening. I'm afraid we need to take this up with the higher authorities, he said, his voice filled with an edge of urgency. There's been a development. Anna's heart dropped into her stomach. What now? What could possibly happen next? The officer handed the phone to Alaric, who took it with a swift motion. His eyes remained fixed on Anna as he spoke into the phone, his voice soft but with an air of authority. Yes, he said, pausing as he listened. I see. Yes, we'll take care of it. Thank you. He hung up, his expression unchanged. The air in the room grew heavier. The tension was palpable. What's going on? Anna demanded, her voice rising in desperation. What's happening, Alaric? Alaric didn't answer immediately. He simply turned to the officer and nodded. You're right, he said. We need to take this to the authorities. I've got someone I need to speak to. Someone who knows the truth. Anna's eyes widened. Truth? What truth? What was he talking about? And then the impossible happened. Veronica Clark, the woman who had been so smug just moments ago, faltered. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide in fear. What's wrong with her? Anna whispered, the dread creeping up her spine. Alaric didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the officer. Take care of the situation here, he said calmly. I have something much bigger to deal with now. The officer nodded, though his confusion was clear. As Alaric walked toward the exit, Anna's world seemed to crumble around her. Veronica was visibly shaking, her composure lost. The crowd remained silent, the tension so thick you could feel it in your bones. And just as Anna thought things couldn't get worse, a voice broke through the silence, echoing through the bank. Alaric, wait. Alaric's hidden truth, and the secrets that will change everything. The voice calling Alaric's name echoed across the room like a ghost from the past. Anna froze, her body stiffening, her heart skipping a beat. She couldn't place it at first, who was calling his name with such urgency. The room seemed to contract around her, the suffocating weight of confusion and fear making it difficult to think. Alaric, wait. Anna turned toward the voice. Standing near the back of the room, just past the reception desk, was a woman she didn't recognize. She was tall, with dark, wavy hair that cascaded around her shoulders. Her clothes were simple but elegant, dark jeans, a tailored jacket, and a sharp look in her eyes that spoke of authority. But it wasn't her appearance that made Anna's pulse race, it was the intensity of the woman's gaze. There was something about her that seemed to set the room on edge. Alaric, too, stiffened at the sound of her voice, his entire body locking in a way that made Anna feel as though she were witnessing a confrontation she wasn't prepared for. His eyes narrowed, but his expression remained unreadable. "Not now, Naomi," Alaric said, his tone low but firm. "This isn't the time." But the woman, Naomi, apparently, took a step forward, ignoring the tension that had gripped the room. She wasn't intimidated by Alaric's command. Instead, she seemed more determined than ever. Her voice, sharp and insistent, filled the silence. "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "It is the time. There's no more running from this, Alaric. You can't just ignore it anymore." Alaric's jaw tightened, and Anna could see a flicker of something dark pass through his eyes. It was the kind of look someone wears when they're caught between their past and the present, when they're forced to face something they've spent years avoiding. Anna felt a sudden rush of unease. This woman, Naomi, who was she? And why did her words seem to carry so much weight? The room held its breath, and even the police officers, who had been quietly observing, seemed to be drawn into this silent standoff. Anna stood frozen, her mind racing to put the pieces together. Alaric's world seemed to be unraveling, layer by layer, and she was stuck in the middle of it all. "Naomi, please," Alaric said again, his voice strained. "I told you, I'll handle this. It's not your concern anymore." But Naomi wasn't backing down. She took another step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "It is my concern, Alaric," she said, her voice unwavering. "You think you can keep me out of this? You think you can just erase the past?" A cold shiver ran down Anna's spine as she tried to make sense of their exchange. It wasn't just that Alaric seemed uncomfortable. It was that Naomi's words had a sharp edge, a sense of urgency and truth that Anna could feel even without fully understanding what was happening. "Please," Naomi continued, her voice growing more insistent, "it's time. You can't hide it forever. You can't keep pretending like everything's fine. The truth is about to come out, Alaric. All of it." Alaric's face hardened, but Anna could see the strain in his eyes. Something was breaking within him, something he had been holding back for far too long. The tension in the room grew thick, suffocating, as if the air itself were laden with secrets begging to be exposed. Then, without warning, Alaric turned to the officer who had been observing silently. "Get her out of here," he said coldly, pointing at Naomi. "She's not part of this." But Naomi didn't flinch. Instead, she moved toward Anna, her gaze softening just for a moment. "I'm sorry you had to get involved in this," she said, her voice low and sincere. "You don't know what you've stepped into, but I wish I could spare you from the storm that's about to hit. Alaric's not the man you think he is. None of us are." Anna's stomach twisted at her words. What was Naomi trying to say? Who was Alaric, really? The picture she had once held of him, the powerful, wealthy businessman who had swooped in to save her, was beginning to crumble. The foundation of trust she had built over the years was suddenly shaky. "What's happening?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. Naomi glanced back at her one last time before turning to leave. "I hope you find the answers you're looking for," she said cryptically. "But know this, some answers will change everything." Anna stood frozen, her mind spinning with the weight of Naomi's words. What had she meant? What was Alaric hiding? And why had she appeared so suddenly in this moment of crisis? As Naomi walked out, the door to the bank closed with a soft click. The tension in the room didn't dissipate, it only grew stronger. Alaric stood still, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down Anna's spine. It was the look of a man who had just been exposed, and for the first time, Anna wondered if there was more to his silence than simple self-protection. "What's going on, Alaric?" Anna asked again, this time her voice firm, demanding answers. She couldn't shake the feeling that Naomi's words were true. That something deep and hidden was about to come to light. Alaric didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. His thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before he dialed a number. The phone rang twice before a voice on the other end answered. "It's done," Alaric said curtly. His words were clipped, his tone sharp. "Make sure the transfer goes through. No mistakes." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. Transfer? What was he talking about? What had he just arranged? Alaric ended the call abruptly and turned to face Anna. His expression was colder than it had been all day, and the warmth that had once seemed to surround him was now gone. "Anna," he said, his voice lower than usual, "you need to understand something. This whole thing is bigger than you realize. I didn't want to drag you into it. I didn't want you to be part of this mess, but I couldn't protect you any longer." Anna took a step back. His words hit her like a punch to the gut. "What mess? What are you talking about?" Alaric exhaled slowly, his eyes searching hers as if weighing whether he should reveal the truth. "I've been keeping secrets. Secrets that, if exposed, would destroy everything. My life, my company, my family. You." Her breath caught in her throat as her mind raced. "What secrets? What is it you're hiding?" Alaric looked away, his jaw clenched tightly. "I didn't want you to know, but it's time. I never wanted you to be dragged into this, Anna, but the truth is. The truth is, my wealth, my fortune, it's all based on lies. It was never mine to begin with. It was stolen." The words hung in the air, heavy with a truth Anna wasn't ready to hear. Her legs felt weak beneath her, the shock of his confession crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Stolen?" Before she could speak, Alaric continued, his voice rough with emotion. "The money, the company, it was all built on a lie. A lie that I've been protecting for years. And now it's all falling apart." Anna's mind spun, unable to process the weight of his revelation. "What do you mean? Who did you steal it from?" Alaric's face twisted in regret. "It wasn't me, not directly. But I've been complicit. My father, he was the one who orchestrated it all. And when he died, I took over. But I've always known what was really behind this empire. And now, the truth is coming for me. For both of us." The words hit Anna like a bolt of lightning, and she stumbled backward, clutching the back of the chair for support. The ground beneath her seemed to tilt. Her thoughts raced in a blur of confusion and disbelief. How could this be true? Alaric, her Alaric, had built his entire life on a lie. A stolen fortune? But before she could form another question, the sound of sirens grew louder. The officers, who had been standing quietly, suddenly moved toward the door, ready to act. "Ma'am," one of them called, his voice serious, "we're going to need you to come with us." Anna's heart sank. The world around her was spinning out of control. What did this all mean? And where was Alaric's role in this dark web of secrets? The truth, she realized, was only beginning to unfold. And it was darker and more twisted than she had ever imagined. The truth that changes everything, and the price we pay for secrets. The police car's sirens blared, cutting through the tension that had settled over the room. Anna's pulse quickened as the officer motioned for her to follow. She glanced at Alaric one last time, trying to read his face. It was hard to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the stranger standing before her, one whose dark past had just been exposed. Alaric's eyes, filled with regret, met hers, and in that brief moment, she saw something she hadn't seen before. It was a mix of fear and something darker, something he had tried so hard to hide. She wanted to ask him more questions, to demand answers, but the weight of his admission hung between them like an invisible barrier. "Anna, please," Alaric said in a strained voice, his words almost pleading. "You don't have to do this." Anna stood there, torn between the truth and the man she had once trusted. He had confessed everything, the empire, the lies, the stolen fortune. But what did it mean for her? And what about Naomi? What role did she play in all of this? "Ma'am," the officer called again, his voice urgent. "We need to move." With one final glance at Alaric, Anna turned away. The door to the bank opened with a quiet creak, and she stepped into the cool afternoon air, the weight of everything sinking in. Her mind raced as she was led toward the waiting police car. She was still struggling to process the whirlwind of revelations, the stolen fortune, Alaric's role in it all, Naomi's cryptic words, and now, the very real threat of legal consequences. How had she ended up here? What was real anymore? Inside the car, the officer remained silent, but Anna's thoughts were anything but. She felt as if her entire world had been turned upside down in the last few hours. Everything she had believed about Alaric, everything she thought she knew about her life, was crumbling before her eyes. And yet, deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. More that Alaric hadn't told her. As the car sped through the streets, Anna glanced out the window, her mind whirling. She had been thrown into the heart of something far bigger than herself. Naomi's words replayed in her mind. "Some answers will change everything." The officer finally broke the silence. "We're taking you to the precinct for questioning, ma'am. You'll be able to speak with your lawyer soon enough." Anna nodded absently, her thoughts still racing. What was the right thing to do? Should she trust Alaric, even after everything that had been revealed? Or had she been played from the start? They arrived at the precinct, and the officer led her inside. The atmosphere was cold and clinical, the walls lined with sterile fluorescent lights. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she was escorted into an interrogation room. It felt like a nightmare, but the reality of the situation was too sharp to ignore. She had been thrust into the eye of a storm, and she wasn't sure if she could weather it. The door clicked shut behind her, and Anna was left alone in the small room. Her thoughts raced, her mind desperately trying to piece together the fragmented puzzle that had formed in the past few hours. Naomi's warning, Alaric's confession, the police officer's cold professionalism. It all felt like a heavy burden she wasn't ready to carry. Then, the door opened again. "Miss Turner?" The officer standing in the doorway was different from the one who had escorted her in. He was tall, his dark suit impeccably pressed, and his face set in a stern expression. He wasn't wearing the usual uniform but rather a dark blazer and slacks, as if he were someone important. "A lawyer, perhaps?" "Yes?" Anna replied, her voice shaky. She had barely spoken since her arrival, still reeling from the shock. "I'm Detective Harris," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm the one handling your case." He sat down across from her, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. "I need you to tell me everything you know about Alaric Winters. I'm not asking for your personal feelings about him. I'm asking you to be honest about your involvement in this situation." Anna swallowed hard. She didn't know where to start. She couldn't even begin to understand how she had ended up in this mess. Her mind was still trying to grasp the full scope of the situation, the full extent of what Alaric had confessed. I don't know what to say," Anna murmured. "I thought I knew him. He was my husband. But," she paused, her voice breaking. "But everything I knew about him turned out to be a lie." Detective Harris nodded, his face unreadable. "What do you mean by that?" Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "Alaric, he told me that his fortune, his entire empire, it wasn't his. He said it was stolen. That his father, she faltered. That his father had built the wealth on lies. That he'd been involved in something illegal. And she closed her eyes briefly, her mind flashing back to the moment he had confessed. I couldn't believe it at first. I thought maybe he was just trying to protect himself. But now, I don't know what to think anymore. Detective Harris didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened the folder and skimmed through a few pages, his expression focused. After a moment, he looked up at her. Alaric Winters has been involved in an ongoing investigation, he said slowly. We've been tracking his financial activities for some time now, trying to unravel a complicated web of illegal transactions. The money, his fortune, it was part of a larger scheme. And we believe you've been unknowingly entangled in it. Anna's head spun at his words. But I didn't know, she exclaimed. I had no idea. I didn't even know about the company until recently. That's what we need to understand, Detective Harris said. How much did you really know about his dealings? We need to figure out if you're a victim in all of this or if you were involved in any way. Anna shook her head vigorously. I swear, I had no idea. I was just a woman trying to survive, trying to help my family. I never wanted any of this. The detective studied her carefully. We'll need more time to look into your involvement. But I can promise you this, if what you're saying is true, if you truly had no knowledge of his actions, you won't be held responsible. But if there's more to this than you're letting on. Anna swallowed hard. There's nothing more. I swear. The detective stood, collecting the papers from his desk. We'll see. For now, stay here. We'll need to process your statement. As he left the room, Anna sat back, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Her life had been turned upside down, and she wasn't sure how to fix it. How could she have been so blind? How could she have missed the signs? But as she sat there, alone in the sterile interrogation room, she realized something: she wasn't just a victim in this story. She had a role to play. A choice to make. The truth had been hiding in plain sight for so long, and now, it was time for her to face it. Minutes turned to hours as Anna waited in the small room. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Detective Harris who entered. It was Naomi. Naomi? Anna's voice was hoarse, her eyes wide in disbelief. What are you doing here? Naomi stepped forward, a look of determination on her face. I'm here to help you, she said simply. The truth about Alaric, it's bigger than you realize. It's not just about stolen money. It's about something much more dangerous. And you need to know the whole story. Anna stood up, her heart racing. What do you mean? What's really going on? Naomi's expression hardened, and she looked over her shoulder, making sure no one else was around. I'll tell you everything. But we need to move fast. Alaric's empire, his entire fortune, it's built on something that could destroy everything. And you're right in the middle of it. The weight of Naomi's words settled over Anna like a dark cloud. She had thought the worst was over, but it was only just beginning. The truth had been hidden for so long, but now, it was about to come to light. And it would change everything.